So something that has been a bit of a fun topic for me to think about over the past few days is the topic of the 2018 draft. If you remember, it's the draft that was Luka, DeAndre Ayton, Trae Young, lots of other names I'm going to get into later. But at this point, even though it's only 3 seasons, maybe 2 full seasons, I don't know exactly the math on that, but it's either 2 or 3 full seasons since that draft. We already have evidence that this could possibly be one of, if not the best draft class of all time. If you look at the entire lottery from that draft class, so picks 1 through 14, you'll see about 7 or 8 guys in that class who were main pieces to a not championship contending team, but at least a playoff team. And in some of these guys' cases, championship contenders. Whether you look at DeAndre Ayton, Luka Doncic, Trae Young, later on there's Mikal Bridges at 10, there's Michael Porter Jr. at 14, and even guys before that who maybe weren't part of championship contender teams. So guys like Colin Sexton, guys like Miles Bridges, guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There's a lot of guys who are really good players in their own right and could be leading their teams to playoff appearances next year as well. And even if you look at the guys that might be considered busts in that 1 through 14 slots, I think there's a lot of hope that a lot of those guys are going to fill their potential. Whether you look at Marvin Bagley at second, who probably just needs a change of scenery from Sacramento, Mo Bamba in Orlando, probably the same exact thing with him. Kevin Knox in New York, I think a lot of people think he got a raw deal in New York with his playing time. The only guy 1 through 14 who I think is kind of considered a bust is Jerome Robinson at that 13 slot to the Los Angeles Clippers. But, really, if you think about it, that's not that bad. And if you look at a draft that a lot of people like to say is possibly one of the greatest of all time, the 2003 draft with LeBron James going first to Cleveland and other names like Carmelo, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, you have other names in there like a bust in Darko Milicic at the number 2 spot, like we have in the number 2 spot with Marvin Bagley in the 18 draft. You have names like Chris Kaman, Kirk Heinrich, Mike Sweetney, Michael Pietras, Nick Collison that fill out that lottery that year. So you compare the names like that to what we have in the lottery this year, or in the 2018 draft, when you have names like Michael Porter Jr. at 14, when you have names like Mikal Bridges at 10, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 11, Miles Bridges at 12, there's a lot better names in that 18 draft who are more integral pieces to playoff and playoff contending teams than there were in that 2003 draft. And it's not only the lottery that is really good for this 2018 draft. You have a lot of names that are later on in the first round, that last half of the first round. Names like Dante DiVincenzo, Troy Brown Jr., Lonnie Walker, Kevin Huerter, Grayson Allen, Robert Williams, Landry Shamet, Anthony Simons. There's so many names in this first round that a lot of those guys had even potential to be in a top 10 of any other draft class. And even if you look at the second round of this draft, you have names that were really big pieces for good teams this year. You have Gary Trent Jr., Bruce Brown, Mitchell Robinson, Devontae Graham, Javon Carter is a decent player, Jalen Brunson is a decent player. There's a lot of really, really, really good players in this draft. Again, comparing this to the second round the last half of the first round and second round of the 2003 draft, really the best players that were taken after the lottery in the 2003 draft. You have names like David West, you have Sasha Pavlovich, you have Boris Diaw, Travis Outlaw, Carlos Delfino's in there, Leandro Barbosa. But after that, it gets really even thinner than it was. There's Willie Green, there's Zaza Pachulia, there's Mo Williams, there's Kyle Korver. There's not a lot of great names from that 2003 draft class when you get out of the top 10, when you get away from LeBron and Melo, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, even a little bit of Chris Kaman and Kirk Heinrich. This 2018 draft, when you compare it to the all-time drafts, when we're looking at this in 10 years, I think we really will be looking at the best draft class of all time. Trae Young has a chance to take this Atlanta Hawks team to the finals against a team in the Milwaukee Bucks who also feature a really good player, even though he's not playing right now in Dante DiVincenzo after he got hurt. You have the Phoenix Suns, who the number 1 draft pick, DeAndre Ayton, has played completely out of his mind in that playoff, these first 3 rounds of the playoffs with the Phoenix Suns. He's been, if not the second best player, he's been the best third option that has been in this finals run for any team in the league. And like I said, there are some guys who we look at as possible busts from that 2018 draft. You look at any draft in NBA history, there's going to be busts. But I think the difference between this 2018 draft and any other draft is there's still a lot of hope for some of these guys. When you look at Marvin Bagley or you look at Mo Bamba, there's a really good chance that those two guys change teams. I mean, you look at the Sacramento Kings, you look at the Orlando Magic, they're basically the East and West versions of each other. When you look at how incompetent their franchises have been over the past decade, just how bad they have been at acquiring talent and keeping the good talent around. The only team that's possibly worse than them is the Detroit Pistons, and we see how it affects a whole franchise, and we can see how it affects a player like Marvin Bagley or Mo Bamba, who were top 6 selections in their own right. And being in that bad of a location can hurt their career really badly. In 10 years, I really think that, Luka Doncic is probably going to have an MVP to his name. Trae Young, he might even get a ring this year with the Milwaukee Bucks. With the Atlanta Hawks, Milwaukee really wish they had Trae Young. There's a chance Trae Young ends up, either Trae Young or DeAndre Ayton end up with a ring this year. There's a really good chance that when next year comes around, Luka Doncic is vying for his own ring. DeAndre Ayton is leading that Phoenix Suns team with his newfound knowledge playing with Chris Paul, and he's, bringing back the center of 20 years ago. He's just bringing back that old school game. You have guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who are going to be leading the rebuild in Oklahoma City. You have Michael Porter Jr., who is going to be leading the new era in Denver. You've got, other supporting pieces that are really good players in their own right, like Dante DiVincenzo, like Kevin Huerter, like Grayson Allen, like Anthony Simons, like Robert Williams and Landry Shamet. There's just so many names in this 2018 draft that I really think, like I've already said, when we're looking at this draft in 10 years, we really are going to be considering this the number 1 draft class of all time. A guy that I haven't even mentioned at this point is Jaren Jackson Jr. At least I don't think that I've mentioned him. I really think that we would be talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. in a different light right now if he did not get injured last year in the bubble. I believe it was a torn meniscus. It may have been a different injury, but I believe it was some sort of knee injury that Triple J had last year in the bubble. And the effect that took on him, probably not only physically but also mentally over this past year, could not be understated. However, the trajectory that Jaren Jackson Jr. was on before that injury was skyrocketing. I think that Memphis Grizzlies team would have been a top 6, top 5 team if he did not get injured last year. But that just keeps on going to show, he just adds to the fire that this 2018 draft has in terms of becoming the best of all time. Alrighty, with all that being said, that's going to be the video for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you want me to talk about other draft classes or just other things other than what's going on in the NBA right now, just leave a comment and I'll make a video about it or not. I do kind of what I want around here. If you like what I do, make sure you hit like. If you don't like what I do, make sure you hit dislike and subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.